The regenerative way begins where the pavement ends. I'm Ryan Snosky, bringing forward conversations with researchers, conservationists, educators, guides, and knowledge keepers from around the world to help us reconnect with land. These are stories born in the field, raw, unpolished, and shaped by the landscapes that hold them. Together we explore what it means to come back into relationship with land, with food, with wild places that shape who we are. The following conversation is with Mpho Matlolane, a PhD candidate in agricultural research in South Africa and just an amazing human being. Mpho has become like a brother to me. We spent about a week together exploring the Vhembe Biosphere Reserve region, as well as some of the northeastern sections of South Africa before recording this podcast, where he really helps just unlock so many of these areas that are rich with culture and, complex social and environmental considerations. And he really was able to bring so much insight and perspective to that experience. I'm so incredibly grateful that we got to share it together and to be able to record this podcast. And Mpho shares invaluable perspectives around agriculture, around food, around systems thinking, and just shares the power of land-based experience and experiential learning. Given that we met each other during the Transdisciplinary International Learning Lab based in the Garden Route Biosphere Reserve. It's one of the flagship programs of TRANSECTS, the Transdisciplinary Education Collaboration for Transformations in Sustainability, which is hosted by the University of Saskatchewan, and it's really transforming science education all around the world, and it's supported by funding from Social Sciences and Research Council of Canada. And I sincerely hope that you appreciate this conversation as much as I did. And Paul, brother.
Ryan.
Dude. Before we dive too far into this conversation, I just wanted to say thank you so much for the past week, man. It's been an incredible experience seeing bits and pieces of places that you hold dear to your heart and places that you've never been before, and to be able to share that together, just been amazing. That really kind of leads into much of this conversation, but before we dive into how we met, how we got here, where are we right now?
So at the moment we're in Mpho Matlolane in the Limpopo province of South Africa. And one of the places I hold dear to me. I traveled through here once, and I loved it. And I always said I wanted to come back, and no better way to come back here with you and see a wonderful place of South Africa. And you can just see it. It's amazing.
It's so amazing.
It's amazing.
It's truly one of a kind.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have the full history of the place and all of that, but just driving through, I think you could also attest to how beautiful it is. And we need a full day or two just to sit here and really enjoy it.
Easy, yeah. Day or two or a week or 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Do you want to just start off by giving a bit of an introduction as to who you are, what you're studying, where you're from in South Africa?
Okay, I'll do so. So my name is Mpho Matlolane, and I am a PhD student at the University of Mpumalanga. I am currently doing my PhD second year, and my study is called Investigating Sorghum and Bambara Groundnut Production Towards Diversifying and Improving South African Food System Resilience. So what I'm basically doing is looking at how we can reintegrate indigenous food crops into the modern South African food system, and looking at how we can play around with diverse and various types of products, and just looking at how farmers are receptive to these type of products. And just trying our best to really diversify the food system and not necessarily rely on the conventional food system that we have, whereby we're importing tons of food, and then now in geopolitical situations, we're struggling, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, my passion for academia, it stemmed from my master's. I never thought I was going to be here. My story started in 2018 when I was in grade 12, and I thought I was going to be a farmer. So, I'm still continuing with agriculture now, but I'm looking at a whole different side of it, and that's a research, policy, and development of the whole country. And I'm having a lovely time, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no kidding. So let's actually start there.
Yeah.
So when you say that you thought that you were going to be a farmer, where does that stem from for you?
So my granddad is a farmer, and then my father became a farmer as well, and I thought I was going to carry on the family tradition. So, I mean, in 2018, came into the University of Mpumalanga to start studying, and I did my BSc in agricultural business, and I had a lovely time. But then in 2022, I realized there's more potential for something bigger. You know, I realized that maybe my call is not just to be a farmer, but do something else and really see if I could find my way in academia. And that's when the passion started. And that's how I started this journey and met you eventually one day. But yeah, it was more inspired on really looking at how South Africa as a whole needs a better agricultural food system, how South African agriculture as a whole needs a better, I can't say better per se, but it needs it needs refreshing. It needs more life and new life into it, and how better if myself as a youth to go into this industry and start looking at how to change ways and make it a bit better, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's beautiful. And, you know, since some of our earliest conversations, it's been so inspiring to see how you use academia thought and, you know, support and institutional support to actually solve important problems.
Yeah.
And they're dear to your heart, but you're looking at the broader system and it's doing research that's applied research, which I think leads into how we did meet and some of your transdisciplinary ways of thinking and the direction that you take. So do you want to just walk through how did we meet at the till? What brought you to the TRANSECTS till?
Yeah. Thank you. Certainly. I mean, applied research is very important. I think when you look at conventional research, it's a bit limited in scope. So applied research was a place where I found I might have a calling there. And going down to farmers, going down to community members and really having a discussion with people and figuring out what are the issues they're really facing. It's different when you have issues that are revolving around literature within the academia space. But when you get down to the farmers and the community members and you really start having conversations with them and spending more time and really embedding yourself into community members and, you know, the ethnographic research, sitting down with people and really understanding their context and seeing where they come from, you really start picking up on problems and how you could come up with better solutions, which do not necessarily always align with academia, but they really help if you align them with the academic process or the scientific process rather.
Yeah.
So from that, I then had a friend that I spoke to and he let me know that there was this TRANSECTS till, the Germany one, where you go into an environment and you study environmental elements and you embed yourself into the communities and the people and you do a bit of transdisciplinarity. And that was a new concept to me. I won't lie to you. I wasn't too certain about it. I wasn't sure. But I said, I mean, I want to travel. I want to see the world. And here's an opportunity as well where I can also further my academics and see and grow a bit better as a person. So I applied for the Canada till. And after applying for the Canadian till, I didn't get accepted. But I found myself being on the waiting list. So while I was on the waiting list, I was told that if a space would open up, I'd be able to get into it. And if I got into it, then I would be able to go to Canada. But unfortunately, that wasn't my till.
Yeah.
Mine would be the next one in the South African one where I met you. And I applied for the South Africa one, and that's how I got into the till.
Yeah.
Yeah. And transdisciplinarity, that's where my role started. That's where my journey started, if I could say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one, I'm so glad that you weren't on the Vancouver till because it's been so incredible to get to know you and, for us to be able to share the experience that we've had thus far and to know that, you know, our lives are going to be integrated in so many different ways. And when you come to Canada, I get to show you bits and pieces. And it stems from that 6-week experience that we had at the till. So there's kind of two pieces that I want to explore there. One, so you had heard about transdisciplinary kind of research or ways of thinking. Maybe can you lay out at that point in time, what were some of your impressions of transdisciplinary research? And then through the till and afterwards, how has that started to evolve for you?
Yeah. I mean, the first part, what was it before I really got a grasp of it? I wasn't sure. I'm told TD. And I'm like, what's TD? I mean, I know multidisciplinary, I know interdisciplinary, but TD. And I'm sitting there and I'm asking myself questions. What is this? You know, a bit of Google research here and there starts to paint a picture, but I'm not sure still. And I mean, the whole mixing of all these disciplines coming together, I thought that's a bit chaotic, eh? It's gonna be chaotic. It's gonna be difficult, but I said, I mean, I don't know. I've never done this before, so let's take some time. Let's see what it is, because I don't know it. And that's where my journey started. and then post-till, or during the till and then post-till, I start realizing that actually this is very necessary. I mean, you look at farming communities and you start to realize there's a social element. There's the agronomic element. There's the economic element. There's the livelihood element. There's so many elements coming in, even psychological element. And you start realizing that some of these elements, when you're doing research, they're not accounted for. So you ask yourself a question, for example, why are these farmers failing? Are they failing because they don't have the necessary acumen? Or is it because they don't have the money? Or is it because they don't have the necessary understanding of what agriculture is at that level? And some of those those questions were not being answered. And through my journey at the till, I started realizing, actually, this is what I've been missing all along. I've been missing the psychological element. I've been missing all these different elements where they could help paint a better picture of why the South African agriculture industry is going in the direction it is. Why certain farmers are not able to do as successful as others with less resources, or with more resources, So it started painting a picture of, it's trying to answer the problems that we have on a more diverse and a more inclusive aspect, if I could say that.
Yeah.
And that started making me understand that this is what I think I've been missing in my research. A more broad perspective and factoring in all these elements that I never thought I needed to factor in.
Yeah.
So that was one of the most important parts for me, and that changed my mindset about research completely. And post-research, I'm working with food scientists. I'm working with I'm working with food scientists. I'm working with agronomic people. I'm working with agribusiness people. I'm working with so many people now because I'm trying to answer these issues and say, why are we not consuming enough indigenous foods? Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's really, really well said.
Thank you. Yeah.
Because it seems TD's work and ways of thinking just seems holistic.
Yeah.
It's like everybody should have a seat at the table, and everybody should be able to contribute to some of these really complicated problems that we face. And you're applying it to the agricultural system in South Africa, but you can see how it connects to so many of these socio-ecological problems. And I know for me, at the till, having practitioners from all over the world, there was problems that were so dear to everybody's heart, and there was such a collaboration of how do we actually solve these. Do you want to speak to some of those pieces? What was it like for you being from South Africa to be transported into a place where you have to deal with people like myself for 6 weeks and live with me for 6 weeks? What was that like for you?
I mean, the first word that comes up difficult.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, when you have
particularly with me.
No, not you. You were lovely. You were lovely. You were lovely.
Yeah.
But when you start dealing with scientists and you put a problem in the middle of the table, then you say, all of us, let's try and unpack it and disseminate the issue. And you have one person saying this, you have one person saying this. It's different angles from different places.
Yeah.
I mean, you have a Canadian, you have a German, you have a South African, you have another person. And that now puts a problem that could be solved in an hour. It opens it up to 2 hours, to 3 hours, to 4 hours, because we're all throwing in what we think is valid, what we think. And there was a point I caught myself in my group, sitting back, and I'm like, we can't do this. I mean, we can't be going back and forth and trying to solve a problem that truly we could have solved in such a sort of short problem. But then that started making me understand the different perspectives.
Yeah.
The different realities that we all come from and how we all think there's a solution that might work. And effectively, that's TD. TD, all of us coming together and finding what is the best solution that can touch on my point, touch on another person's point, touch on your point, and really create a holistic type of solution. And that's where I started realizing that TD is quite an interesting and important research methodology to a certain extent.
Yeah.
So, I mean, difficult at the beginning, but over time started becoming easier, started becoming more fun, but I think I have to classify it as difficult because it's many voices. And it's sometimes difficult when you all have scientific brains and you're trying to really attack a problem in this scientific component, and there's there's so many issues, and coming and threading that balance where we're all gonna say, this will take a bit of that, a bit of that, a bit of that, and a bit of that, and truly this will make a holistic solution, was one of the things I found a bit difficult but worthwhile.
Yeah.
Difficult but worthwhile, if I had to summarize it.
Do you want to speak to that? Because I do think some people romanticize this idea of, multiple stakeholders at a table and being able to actually bring, voice to these problems. Yeah. And it's easy when those voices are in harmony, but it's really difficult when there's clash and a difference of opinion. Yeah. What were some of the pieces that you learned? What are what are the difficult pieces that are attached to transdisciplinary work, and then what are some of the tools or approaches that you felt were really helpful?
Okay, well, the difficulties, I found bias. That was, I think, that was the most difficult one for me. You start to realize that we all come from different contexts with all this bias in our hearts and in our understanding. And though unintentional sometimes, it's our lived experience. So it being our lived experience makes it a bit difficult for us now to fully disseminate a problem, because you're going to come from that understanding that, I mean, I'm looking at it from a South African context purely. And that's where now I started finding it difficult, that a person would say, I want to do this, let's do it this way. Suggest an idea, but the idea is quite rudimentary. It's quite one-sided. And you say, but let's look at it this way. And then another person weighs in on the other side, so the other person's idea. Then another one, and then it's like almost sides have been taken.
Yeah.
And then you're like, how are we going to sort this out? And then obviously you come down to a simple vote. Okay, 3 people here, 2 people here. Okay, they win, let's go. Because we didn't have time, you understand? But also you start to realize that the bias is there. And I think one very important aspect of TD is that you're going to have to remove your bias and learn from other people. Yes, sometimes it's necessary because of the context you're living in and you have better understanding, but opening yourself up a bit more to understand where the next individual is coming from makes the situation a bit better. So that was one of the most difficult things, bias. But tools that I thought that we could implement, or that we did implement in our group, was listening to each other, but also the voting. Sometimes you have to just come to a simple vote and say, okay, but this one sounds more feasible within the context that we're working in, or sometimes calling in a different voice just to try and guide us in a different light.
Yeah.
But you can't have too many cooks in the kitchen. I think we have to say that very importantly. You have to have your sous chefs, you have to have your head chef, you have to have certain people leading and guiding certain objectives towards a certain point. So playing to our strengths. That was one of the things I also realized, that if you can play to your strength, it limits the bias to a certain extent.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I love that. 1 second.
Okay, buddy.
Oh, perfect. Sorry.
Not a problem.
Yeah, and I think that aspect is beautifully put. That there's a time and a place for, you know, these open, free-flowing conversations, and then there's a time and a place where action needs to be taken. There needs to be a direction, you know, forward, and particularly in the context of the till, which in some ways I feel like has limitations because it is a 6-week TD environment. Like that for me was eye-opening of just how much time it actually takes to understand context, to build rapport, understand, you know, who naturally should lead in a moment in time. Like coming out of the till for you, how are you going to apply transdisciplinary kind of ways of thinking in the research that you do, but also just the work that you engage with?
I think one thing I love the most about TD, it has the word co in front of everything. Co-production. I forgot that, but it has co.
Yeah.
So you start to realize you can't do it by yourself. You need the other person. You need the community. You need all these people involved to really make your research study comprehensive. And that's one thing I'm really taking out of it, that I can't do it by myself. I need more people to really, really guide me and show me. I mean, I find myself having discussions with my parents, saying, hey, what do you think about this? And you'll have this voice and they say, shucks, you're onto something, thank you. Then you run and you do a bit of research. You go to your dad, you go to your mom, you go to your brother, sometimes even your younger brothers. You ask him, why aren't you eating the sorghum, for example? And that paints a picture of everyone is involved.
Yeah.
By the time you start doing your proper research study, going to the stakeholders and having conversations with them, you have a full picture of what it might look like from already another picture in South Africa. So post-till, I really, really took out the fact that I can't do it by myself. I need people to work with me, and more so bias. I think that really touched my heart when I started realizing that unfortunately we're all not on the same plane, because we all have our own ideas of what should work and what could work. Yet sometimes what we think is not good enough for a situation. And that's where I found myself in a difficulty whereby unfortunately some people need to really take a step back in some instances, because their bias is what's leading them to talk, not necessarily the full understanding of the context. And that's where I took the whole notion of TD from, especially post my till in the Western Cape.
Yeah. Really well said. Really, really well said. Going back into the till.
Yeah.
And so TD work, I think, is interconnected in all of these conversations. But I know for me, some of the paradigms that I had, going into the till,
Yeah.
and then over those 6 weeks of living with people from all over the world,
Yeah.
I had so many paradigm shifts.
Yeah.
I had so many moments where I was questioning things that I thought were just, the right or wrong ways to approach things, and, connected to research, but also just connected to life.
Yeah.
Did you have something similar?
I did.
Yeah.
I had many. I think one that got me, we lived in the same house, remember?
Yep.
So one Sunday morning, I found out that you, Paulina, Debbie were out. I mean, this is 2 Canadians and 1 German. You went hiking, like you went to go and be busy. And then I look in the kitchen and I find it's the South Africans only. And I'm like, hey, what's going on here? And that was when that light of an outdoor catered, centered lifestyle, whereby you guys are going out to hike. You're going out to be really immersed in nature, even in your free time, even when, part of the self-care, taking yourself out to nature. And I sat down and I started thinking, to be honest, my lifestyle, so not my decision at that time, my full lifestyle doesn't necessarily put nature at the forefront of what I want to do sometimes. And that challenged me from a life perspective. So I found myself looking at, why is it like this to a certain extent? And I thought maybe my lived experiences, my culture, my background had a role to play in this. And that started guiding me to the world out there.
Yeah.
What's out there, the different cultures, habits of living, and a lifestyle that is more universal but more holistic, if I could say that. A lifestyle that takes into consideration a bit of nature, a bit of different lived experiences, a bit of everything to really form a person. Because it's easy to hold on to what you knew. But to really open yourself up to what is different is something that I found quite interesting. And that's what the till did for me. That even till today, I enjoy the occasional hike. I enjoy going out, taking a jog, being with nature. I enjoy really going into trails and really, really immersing myself at that time. And so this is something I purely learned at the till. And when I came back home, some of my friends and family were surprised. Like, really? And I'm like, I'm learning to appreciate this, genuinely. So I took that on a personal note. And then on a professional note, it was the notion of being on top of your game. Sometimes you really have to understand your field, because that's what's expected of you when you get to a place like into TD research rather. It's really expected of you to really know what you're talking about. And I mean, you can't know everything, but the little bit you truly understand, hang on to that and really talk proudly and talk confidently about that. And then everything else will fall into place.
Yeah.
So that was my understanding, yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's super cool. I didn't actually know that stood out that much, the hiking piece. I must say, from my own experience with that, I'll never forget, I've hiked a lot in North America, but to hike amongst baboons, that is no joke. And just to experience the humility of, one morning going for a run and there being, I don't know if the label would be an alpha, but there was a big male, and I went to go and take a photo of him because he was just kind of hanging out close to where the trail was, and he barked at me, and it like right to your core is like, oh, you're hiking in a different environment, you're in a completely different landscape, and some of the things that you guys had normalized. I remember the monkeys coming to our house and you being so calm and knowing how to respond to this moment, and me feeling like, yo, there's a monkey about to come into our house.
I mean, you talk about that, and I remember Paulina one morning, I don't know, someone had left the front door open of our house, and then I just hear, it's footsteps in the house, and I hear, ah! I'm like, what's going on now? And I open the door, looking. Paulina like, Mpho, there's a monkey in the house. And I'm like, how must I deal with it? How must I justify it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I had to run out, and you see this monkey running to you. And then we tried to chase it out and herd it out, and it left,
Yeah.
But that's after it had really pulled a heist on our house.
Yeah.
It had stolen Debbie's mandarins, a few other apples, fruits, and good food.
Yeah.
And it really messed up Debbie's thing. So we had a good laugh about it, but I mean, it was a different experience. Where I come from, we don't really like monkeys and baboons and all that. But in the Western Cape, I see this life that, they're part of nature. Let's embrace them, but let's try and protect our households as well. Close windows, close doors, and not have them come into our house.
Yeah.
So that was something very interesting, if you ask me.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's funny, I don't know if the camera's picking it up, but we actually have a monkey jumping in the background.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah.
One thing that I did want to explore, because I think it's really important, there's kind of two pieces. One is land-based experience. I think there's a human element that even this conversation, you having experience with monkeys, many of us never having experience with monkeys, you're just catapulted into this moment of time where there's a shared camaraderie and a shared, you know, some people might be afraid in that moment, some people are showing strength, and vice versa. There's a reciprocity. So I definitely want to explore that piece, but I also want to explore the piece of the perspective that one goes into land-based experience, because right from the bat, you and I hit it off and had a really deep conversation first night that I arrived. And I think it enhances the vulnerability that's needed to be able to kind of share that space. And when I felt, you know, afraid, you showed me strength and you led the way. How did you prepare, you know, thinking about a 6-week experience like this? And what are some of those pieces that you think go into any practitioner or, you know, individual that's about to sign up for something like that? How should they show up?
I mean, firstly, you have to be yourself. I think on the drive here, we were talking about something similar, whereby being yourself is the best thing you can ever do for yourself and this world. We have different copies of many people, but yourself, you're original, you're unique. So when you bring that to the table, it brings a different element that we don't know. And if you can just show us that part of yourself, it helps everyone really, really, not to say like you, but it helps everyone get to know you and see who you are and what you stand for. I mean, to a certain extent, there were things I was like, I could have done a bit better there after the tour when I was evaluating the whole experience for myself. But beyond that, I learned, be yourself. And that's one thing I found very interesting with you and me when we arrived, that parts of my life that first discussion, we were talking about something quite close to each other's hearts, you know. And I laughed at how social media and different lived experiences can bring two people together that, I mean, we shared different experiences, which are quite similar. And then when we came together, we were able to share on that and build on that. And that's when I start to realize, so I'm not that unique as much as I am very unique. But there's so much that goes into being able to have discussions with people from a different perspective and different background, and that also shows up through you being yourself. So I felt that my morals and my values and who I want to be and what I stand for was easily accepted by you. And hence it was so easy for us to also have a discussion post-till and still be friends and still be able to have discussions, because I felt that it's easier that way. And as I grow up more and more, I start to realize being yourself is the best thing. So with that land-based experience, I would believe that it's okay, you can all come from different places, but your uniqueness is very important for that experience that you're going to go through. So if a person wanted to sign up for the tour, you are perfect. No matter who you are, where you come from, your experience is going to be, it's going to be respected. It's going to be loved, and I think once you get to the tour, you'll realize that that's exactly who we need. We need you. Yeah. So it hits home, it hits a bit deeply with me that we need people more authentic, you know? Yeah.
But through that authenticity, there's a humility that I think people need to draw from, and you showed humility right from the bat of just engaging with these conversations, and like there was a dance where you could tell that you were considering it and you were considering what was being talked about, and I feel like that is so admirable and such a big piece of you know land-based experience with diversity is showing that there's like an openness to engage with all these different perspectives and biases. Has it inspired you to do more land-based experience? Like, as you look to the future, are you hoping to build off the till?
Yes, I mean, certainly. I mean, there was a discussion I had with Matlolane, one of my group members, and he just enlightened me, and he challenged me. And there was a point I had to just give up. I thought my perspective of the argument was quite on a firm ground. And he made me realize that's my experience. So that opened up my eyes to say sometimes it's important to listen to others. It's very important to put aside your own understanding. It's very important to really, though you may be right, it's important to really just step aside from the situation and listen to other people and see where they're coming from and understand their lived experience and what they are saying. Because that will open up your life to something you never really understood. And I felt that my time at the tour was something like that, especially with Matlolane. He challenged me. He questioned me. And there was a point where I sat down and I'm like, thank you. I never thought I'd get to a position where I understood some of these difficult topics, but you made it so much easier. So, I mean, I even forgot the question now, I'm sorry, but you were asking again?
No, I was just kind of building off of that point that you just raised, and then that inspiration for kind of more of these experiences, because I think there's a deepening of an understanding of,
So that's exactly where I'm coming from. That I think after that with Matsubani, it made me realize I lack so much. Yes, I know a few, but I would want more land-based experiences because I want to hear from more different backgrounds. I want to be a bit more challenged. I want to see different perspectives that I never saw before. And I want the opportunity to do this all while building my academic career, which is something I want to follow. So having that opportunity to do so and going to land-based experiences like that is something I really, really hold dear to me. And I would hope that many people can really have an opportunity to do so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to do so in your life, when you look to some of the work with agricultural systems or potentially working in biospheres, do you think it's a piece that is almost the foundation? Because that's the piece that I walked away with, is you only develop a relationship with these problems when you immerse yourself in it. And it's really easy to seclude yourself and work out of the comfort of an office or separation, but it's when you engage with people on the grounds.
Yeah, I mean, true. The problem I'm facing now in my country and that hits hard is that there's a top-down approach. And a top-down approach is removed from the realities on the ground. It's something I've always complained about that, but how do you know what a farmer truly needs if you haven't spoken to them, if you haven't visited them, if you haven't had a discussion with them to truly understand them? And I feel that TD really speaks about that bottom-up approach. And that's something I feel is very necessary for, a developing country, where the government sometimes is removed from the problems on the ground, buffered by all these bureaucratic processes and municipal, governmental, national and all of that, all the way to the top. So it's something I find that was very tricky for me, and I feel that it's important to have that connection to the ground. One of the men that I like listening to, and I read his book, he speaks about how he has a pair of boots, and in his job interview for a very high position, he spoke about taking his boots to the interview and showing the people that I'm not a person who sits in the office. These boots I take back to the ground because my inspiration is the ground. My inspiration is what's happening at the bottom, so that I can actually understand how to better situations on the ground. So that's something I took with me from the till as well, that rather than being in an office, be immersed with the people. Being immersed with the people will truly give you the solutions, because some of the people you're dealing with, they know what they want. They know what the solution is, and they've developed certain solutions to deal with the problems they're already facing. You can just build off of that instead of trying to come with a whole new solution that doesn't work. So I learned a lot from that perspective.
That's powerful. Let's explore that a little bit as it relates to agriculture, because through many of the conversations that we've had, I feel like the South African example relates all around the world, and many of the systems have become separate from the indigenous native plants, and there's a deterioration of much of the integrity of those systems. So when you think about, putting on those boots, going to the farmers and going to the people that are engaging with this problem, how are you exploring that?
Firstly, these indigenous foods and crops have always been there. The world developed and took the ones that they felt were needed. That's your maize, your soybeans, your sunflower. They've always been there. And we developed them further to have more volume. And that's what we're using today. But you have your sorghums, you have your bambara groundnuts, you have your blackjacks, you have so many indigenous food crops. And the worst part about it, if you look at the way our food system is set up, we're only eating from 20 species of the type of food crops, from the food species that we have out there. And we have over 100, which tells you now there's a big problem. The problem that our food is centered around this, and if these fall off the table, what are we going to eat? So going back to the ground, you start looking at how farmers have been planting some of these. But now, what is the issue? Why aren't they making their way up the food chain to more households in the cities? Why? And now you start realizing it's policies. You don't have enough volume in one type of plant. So you find that when you plant a hectare of this, it doesn't translate into a proper profit for farmers to do so. So that's when you have to get your seed technology guys in and all these other stakeholders in to really try and make this a bit more of a commodity that can be really mass produced, but in a good way, because you're also trying to take care of the environment. So you're looking at how you can mass produce these crops for a profit for the farmers, but also for the benefit of the food system for the end product consumers. So it's going back and really speaking to the farmers and saying, hey, what's the problem with this? And you'll find they'll tell you issues, for example, sorghum. Birds love it. So you'll find that birds really pick off In other instances, you find that theft is loved because according to their cultures, it's one of those amazing crops. So they steal a lot of those crops. So going to the farmers is very important. Beyond just looking at the type of health trends and food trends we have, speaking to the people who actually plant these and who eat them and eat them on a daily basis tells you exactly what you could do to really mass produce these foods, these crops, and really reintegrate them into the food systems today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So speak to that reintegration. If you could wave a magic wand, if you could reimagine the South African agricultural system, how does this regenerative, it sounds like regenerative agriculture that you're speaking to, there's a system that's working together and playing off of all the different variables. How does this look for you?
Well, one, more localized. So let's stop really importing so much. Let's look at more localized systems. Let's stop letting food come from 4 places in the same country. I mean, there are foods that grow in specific provinces. Let food become an experience as well through the different types of crops that are grown in specific type of climates and biomes and all of that within the region of South Africa. So localizing food systems would be amazing. And that's where you'd have more farmers selling direct to market, making a bit more money for themselves. And you'd have fresher food, you'd have more access to food from a local perspective. And that's where now you're helping farmers make a bit more money. And also you're making sure that the food system is self-sustainable within a specific region. So if anything happens, for example, COVID, you know that you don't have to rely on food coming from Cape Town to come into your little local market, because your market can cater to that to a certain extent, which would be the monkeys, which would be very beneficial for you and your local community. And then 2, reintegrating these foods by allowing, by growing the economy or the world with these foods. Example of this is China. China has taken the indigenous foods with them. So as they became more urbanized and they became more involved in the global food system, they also carried their own indigenous foods with them. Hence, you have taro or boba. You have these specific indigenous type of foods and coming out of China because they grew with it. They allowed it to infiltrate their own food system, and they allowed it to actually to create food products which would be relevant within today's food system needs. And that's what has saved them effectively, the foods in the ecosystem. So, I mean, it's very important to have people coming up with more innovations with indigenous foods. So, for example, amaranth tea, if you could do so, sorghum bread. Looking at more different ways of integrating the food in ways in which will really be consumed and loved within today's ecosystems.
Yeah, I could absolutely see that. And it's so interesting when speaking to Lutendo and him talking about grazing practices. And so many of the practices that seem regenerative or sustainable in nature fall within traditional values. And even when you're talking about, native plants, there was a time when these native plants were utilized. Does that resonate with you when you think about your grandfather who was, a farmer? And is this passion that you're drawing from, or this vision for it, does it stem from a legacy of the past?
To a certain extent, yes. I mean, my grandmother in particular, she would cook sorghum porridge for us. So that's something I always got when I visited my grandmother. And that stayed with me. And I remember when I started my MSc project, we started looking at sorghum purely. And I remembered my grandmother. And that's the type of porridge that I would love consuming. But it's not as nice as what you call this a maize porridge because of certain gritty texture of sorghum and all those things. But it's still very amazing. But it also has a specific skill set that makes that porridge, which was now a bit difficult because as we move on in time, we want easier food, man. Something you prepare in 10 minutes and you quickly eat. Whereas that takes some days because you have to ferment the flour and you have to do all those processes, which makes it extremely nice. So seeing that and building from that, I realized, no, man, there should be a way we can really reintegrate these foods into our food system because also they're healthier. I mean, indigenous foods are now booming in the world health type of food trend because people are going back to them. I mean, you look at sorghum, it's used to treat patients with celiac disease because it doesn't have gluten. It's gluten-free naturally. So you start to look at it and you're like, I mean, that's an amazing crop. Also, it grows in adverse climate. So it can grow in drought-stricken areas. It can also grow in waterlogged conditions, meaning it's quite hardy, especially for the African climate. So you start to realize that, I mean, this is something that could work. I mean, in the Free State in 2015, they had a very, very bad drought. And now looking back, I asked myself, why didn't they plant sorghum? Why didn't they look at these indigenous crops? It's because the food systems we are now buying from don't necessarily want that. And that's exactly what has been pushed to us. I mean, it's a good breakfast cereal, but because of it not being as sweet as other cereals and other products on the market, it's not consumed as much. So how do we now take this and really reintegrate it? How do we make it how do we make it applicable to everyone, especially the young kids? I mean, you look at a product like Cocoa Pops. I mean, I love that growing up. But today you start to realize that from a health perspective, you need something more nutrient dense. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how I see it now. And I mean, I believe food is medication as well. I believe because the food you eat also helps the way you live your life. So if you can have these foods on shelves ready to eat, wouldn't that be better for everyone? Less money spent on medication, less money spent on visiting doctors and all those issues. Because you're effectively treating yourself while also filling your stomach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think there's so many pieces that, tie into that. When you look at a regenerative system,
Yes.
the soil has more nutrients.
Yes.
And so an apple is not the same as an apple.
There you
It depends
go.
on the soil that it's grown in
Yes.
and the
Yeah.
entire system. There's, when you speak about other older generations that have lived amongst these plants, there seems to be a relationship to food.
Yeah.
There was an awareness that you are what you ate, and there was an awareness that it required time and consideration and even fermentation, as a process. I know for Elsa and I, we're trying to get into baking sourdough bread, and it's a process.
Yeah.
And it's been eye-opening to see how many things that we take for granted that we buy, and the convenience factor is the priority.
Yeah.
But now you're speaking to the health factor. You're speaking to a way of reimagining this system by drawing from insights from the past.
Yeah. I mean, true. I mean, you look at sourdough, amazing. For gut health, amazing. And it's so nice. And I mean, you don't have to buy any yeast. You can do it at home. But it's the process, which now makes you appreciate bread. Even if it's store-bought, you will look at it differently because you're like, the fact that I know how to make it and I know how to make a better version of what I can buy in the shop, you'd rather gravitate to the one you can make at home, especially if you have a lot of time and this is something that matters to you. Mm-hmm. I mean, I started now using a bit more honey instead of sugar. And it's interesting. You start to develop this different taste profile as well for the food you consume. You start to realize how just a teaspoon of honey is just as sweet as like 3 teaspoons of sugar.
Yeah.
And your life, you start to really, it's a process now. It becomes a journey with your food because now you look, where can I get it cheaper? Because, there's a stigma that healthy food is a bit more expensive, which is, I mean, to a certain extent. But you start to look for places where you can really have organic, genuinely just good grown food with love. I mean, you can taste food that really tastes grown with love, and it really speaks to who you are and what you're trying to do in your life. And as I try and journey towards a more healthier lifestyle, I start looking at how things like honey, sorghum, and all these types of indigenous foods that have been always there, how can I really integrate them into my diet? And the process it now takes you into appreciating food is a beautiful one, if you ask me.
It's a beautiful one, and I love this conversation because hearing your story, I think in so many ways it speaks to transdisciplinary research and international collaboration, because although it's South African specific, this example, there's so many parallels that I'm drawing in my mind of the need to reimagine the systems that I come from, and this relationship to food and the way that we think about it, and what were native plants that were grown and cultivated. And I think it's so powerful to see how it's all interconnected in many, many ways. And although people can sometimes feel a bit siloed in their research or the context that they work in, I think TD work and even the way that you speak about these systems and problems is like you can see how they're international. Can you just quickly kind of speak to that, because I know you have some big international plans lined up potentially, and it seems like the work that you've done with TRANSECTS and the work that you're doing with your PhD is really setting you on a path for international collaboration and multiple voice and perspective.
Yeah, I mean, firstly, shout out to my supervisors. They're really doing the most for me. I really appreciate their help. And they're putting me on a trajectory where internationally, it's becoming more and more important to really reintegrate indigenous foods into the whole world's food system. And we're quickly realizing that these foods have been marginalized simply because there are specific stakeholders in the food industry globally that wanted to push their own agenda. And you start to realize that, but the foods we always had were always okay. The foods that were eaten back in the day, they were not wrong. They were not poor man's food. They were not foods that were seen as second-hand, second-grade type of food. No, they were always good food, but there was more happening in the food sector, and we were trying to push in this direction because we thought this is what we need as a society globally. And my supervisors are now opening me up to this international perspective where the researchers we're involved with and the universities that we're trying to get into working with are seeing food the same way. And they're seeing Africa as a catalyst of these foods going back into the food market. So that's something I find interesting, and not to really share too much before it really starts happening, but I can't wait to really go into Europe, into North America, and to all these countries where you really see that food is an important aspect, and especially good, healthy food.
Yeah.
It's very important.
It's very important,
Yeah.
and I think we can all learn from one another around
Yeah.
this conversation,
Yeah.
because the health issues and the industrialization of monocrop
Yeah.
agriculture and factory farming
Yeah.
seems to be taking place internationally,
Yeah.
and people are contending with how do we solve these problems, and it's all hands on deck, so
Yeah.
to speak, and
Yeah.
it's so inspiring to see that you're leaning into that, and you're open and willing to engage with these conversations, and help shape some perspective and consideration, but also be very open-minded to perspective and consideration. It's deeply, deeply inspiring. One kind of final wrap-up question, just around the till. It's really difficult to unpack an experience like that.
Yeah, it is.
But is there a moment in time that really stands out for you where there was just like an epiphany, or you had that paradigm shift in real time, or something took place where it was like, oh my gosh, my life has changed?
I think as I was sitting at the airport on my way back to Nelspruit, it hit me. I'm like, where do I come from? What did I just do? 6 weeks of what? Okay, I really need to digest this. I need some time. And it took me like 2 months after the tour to really digest this whole experience. And that time on the airport flying back home, I was asking myself, what did I just do? Like, where do I come? Like, what was going on? Because it happened so quickly. Even though you think it's 6 weeks is a long time, it's fast. It really moves fast. And at that point, I was asking myself a lot of questions on the plane. Asking myself, so now how do I take all these lived experiences? How do I take all these things I did there and all these learning moments and these new learned moments, and I integrate them into what I'm doing now? How do I truly come back to what I'm normally used to, but without being the same person that I left as? And that's something that hit me hard. There was a day I was driving home. As I was coming out of my university, I remember now the university smelling fresh. And it felt like there was a new perspective to my academic life, because I had this TD and this till experience that I just come out of that rejuvenated me and made me see academia in a more fresher perspective. So that was the hallmark of my point. Coming away from it and now thinking about Enya's words, Michael's words, time spent with Bianca, Lutendo, Heinke, and all the amazing people we met along the journey. That's when it hit me that there's such a big thing to do. There's so much more to do, and those people were the catalyst of who I want to become. They place me in a position whereby I can be propelled much more further forward, because their words and their teachings and so many things we got there will help me as a person move further up as I want to move, as I build my academic life. So, it's not as glamorous, I'm sorry, but it's something that really stood out to me. And as I was sitting at the airport, I realized I was blessed. At that moment, I realized I was blessed. A beautiful opportunity, and if anyone has an opportunity to go through 6 weeks or 2 weeks or 3 weeks of a life-changing experience like that, I would say they must go for it. I would really say they must go for it. So, beyond the academic, the people, meeting different perspectives and having people challenge you in a way you've never been challenged before. That's wealth. That's gold. So yeah, that's my take.
Beautifully put. Beautifully put. Thank you so much
you.
for sharing that. I know I said that was the final question, but there's one question that I try to ask everybody for the regenerative way, and it's been really interesting to see how people approach this question. What's one practice or habit that connects you to the natural world?
Jogging.
Jogging.
Jogging in nature. Just going back into nature, running through the fresh smell, even walking, man. Just being immersed in nature. I think that's what I love about your podcast, The Regenerative Way. It shapes your future through your connection to nature. It's like, for me, how I see it, it takes me to a place whereby nature tells me what it's calling out for. So it's like when you're walking in the woods, nature tells you that, hey, the world needs this type of person. And you have those elements within you to be that person. Once you hit that stillness of being by yourself, immersed in nature, it tells you something. There's a communication it speaks to you with, and it says, this is what we need. We need a protector in this way. And nature could be societal, it could be economic, it could be in so many other aspects. But it connects you to your true you and what you have to bring out into this world. Because my belief is that we're all unique and there's something in us that has to come out. And I believe that's what I find in nature. And your podcast always reminds me to go back to that. It reminds me to go back to that person that's inside of me that needs to come out. So, I mean, yeah, that's how I take it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think nature is that infinite teacher.
Yeah.
And it's the teacher that you can access at any point of your life and show up for it, and it will guide the process. Brother, you were a stranger at one point not that long ago. You've turned into a brother in my life. I'm so glad to be able to record this conversation. I'm so glad to have the experience that we've had in South Africa and to be able to build upon that. And for me, there's a couple of pieces, but one, I don't take it for granted, and two, I'm so infinitely grateful that TRANSECTS and organizations like it that are bringing international collaboration are helping facilitate opportunities for, researchers and individuals and practitioners from all over the world to have moments in time, in place, to have land-based experience, to form these bonds, because I think we all face big problems, and it depends upon the relationships that we have that are going to tackle them. And I know that you and I, as well as many others that were connected to TRANSECTS, are connected to TRANSECTS, are on that path to work together. So I thank you so much for everything that you do. I thank you so much for this conversation, so much powerful insight, and you're a beautiful, beautiful human being.
Thank you, man. Thank you for having me. And thank you to TRANSECTS as well. I think we don't say thank you enough to them. The team, Bianca, Lutendo, thank you guys, man. Thank you so much thank you for this. I mean, we sometimes don't know what we need until we meet people we talk to. And that's the team at TRANSECTS. And thank you for the opportunity to meet wonderful people like Ryan and everyone else we met. So thank you to them, thank you to you. And I mean, we thank the maker as well. We thank the maker as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you, buddy.
Thank
Love
you.
Love you loads.
Love you.